The crystal spires of Valaris Prime reached toward 3 purple suns, their surfaces catching and reflecting light in patterns that created natural music across the city. Zara stood on her family's balcony, watching the morning light dance through the towers while her mother's voice grew sharper behind her. A human, Zara. Of all the species in the galaxy, you chose a human. Vera's crystalline skin flickered with angry orange patterns, a sure sign of her displeasure. Do you understand what people are saying about our family? Zara turned away from the view, her own skin showing calm blue patterns despite the tension in her chest. I married Ben because I love him, mother. What people say does not change that. Love. Vera's patterns shifted to disappointed yellow. You could have chosen from the finest Valari warriors, or even a noble from the Keth Empire. Instead, you bring home a silent creature who cannot even speak our language properly. He understands more than you think, Zara said quietly. And he is learning our ways. Through their family's crystal walls, Zara could see Ben in the garden. He sat perfectly still on a stone bench, watching the morning creatures that lived in their energy flowers. His dark hair caught the light, and his brown eyes followed each tiny being with patient attention. In his lap lay the sword he always carried, a simple metal blade in a worn leather sheath. To Valari scanners, it showed no energy signature at all. Just dead metal from a primitive world. Look at him, Vera said, following her daughter's gaze. He sits there like a statue. No telepathic presence, no energy manipulation, no useful skills. What does he contribute to our society? Zara's patterns flared bright blue with controlled anger. He contributes kindness, mother. He contributes loyalty. He contributes a strength you cannot measure with your scanners. Strength? Vera laughed, the sound like crystal chimes. That creature could not lift a power stone, much less defend you in battle. The Galactic Council gathering begins tomorrow. You will bring him there, and everyone will see what you have chosen over your own kind. After her mother left, Zara walked into the garden. Ben looked up as she approached, his face showing that small smile he saved just for her. He did not speak often, but when he did, his words carried weight. Your mother is worried about tomorrow, he said in careful Valari, his accent still thick but understandable. She thinks you are weak, Zara admitted, sitting beside him on the bench. She thinks I made a mistake. Ben nodded slowly, his fingers absently touching the sword across his knees. Many people think humans are weak. We do not have crystal skin that shows our emotions. We cannot speak mind to mind like your people. We cannot shape energy with our thoughts. Then what do you have? Zara asked. She had wondered this many times but had never asked directly. Ben was quiet for a long moment, watching a small energy butterfly land on his hand. The creature's wings glowed soft green, and it seemed completely comfortable resting on his skin. We have will, he said finally. When something matters enough, we do not give up. Ever. The next morning, Zara and Ben prepared for the journey to the Council Dome. The massive structure floated above Valaris Prime's capital city, held aloft by energy fields that had been maintained for 1,000 years. Representatives from dozens of species would gather there to share knowledge, trade agreements, and display their unique abilities. Zara dressed in her formal robes, the crystal threads woven into the fabric creating patterns that marked her as a member of the warrior class. Ben wore simple dark clothing from his homeworld, with his sword strapped across his back. The contrast between them was striking, her tall, elegant form covered in shifting light patterns, and his shorter, solid frame that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Are you nervous? Zara asked as they boarded the transport that would take them to the dome. No, Ben said simply. Nervous does not help anything. The transport filled with other passengers, mostly Valari nobility heading to the gathering. Zara noticed how they looked at Ben, their skin patterns showing confusion, amusement, and sometimes disgust. One young male, Kane, approached their seats with patronizing green patterns glowing across his face. Zara, my dear friend, Kane said in formal Valari, completely ignoring Ben. How wonderful to see you. I trust you are well. I am very well, Kane. This is my husband, Ben. Kane's patterns shifted to mocking yellow as he finally looked at Ben. Ah yes, the human. He switched to basic standard, speaking slowly and loudly. Hello, human. Do you understand me? Ben looked up at Kane with calm brown eyes. Yes, he said in perfect basic standard. I understand you fine. Wonderful. Kane clapped his hands together. And what do you do, human Ben? Are you a laborer? A maintenance worker perhaps? I was a soldier, Ben replied quietly. Kane's patterns showed delighted surprise. A soldier. How exciting. Did you fight other humans? Over resources? Territory? His tone suggested he was talking to a child about playground games. Sometimes, Ben said. His voice remained level, but Zara noticed his hand had moved closer to his sword hilt. Usually we fought things that threatened people who could not protect themselves. How noble, Kane said with false admiration. And this sword you carry, is it ceremonial? A symbol of your primitive military service? Ben's eyes never left Kane's face. It serves its purpose. Something in Ben's tone made Kane step back slightly, though his mocking patterns continued. Well, I am sure everyone will be fascinated to learn about human military traditions. Perhaps you can demonstrate your sword techniques during the cultural presentations. After Kane moved away, Zara placed her hand over Ben's. I am sorry about him. He is afraid, Ben said simply. Afraid? Of what? Of anything he does not understand. Ben looked out the transport window as they approached the council dome. Many people are afraid of what they do not understand. The council dome was magnificent beyond description. Its transparent walls showed the star-filled space beyond, while inside, representatives from across the galaxy mingled on multiple levels connected by flowing energy ramps. The Keth delegation moved in perfect synchronization, their hive mind allowing them to coordinate without spoken words. The Thraxi representatives casually reshaped nearby matter into artistic sculptures as they talked. Energy beings from the Photon Collective flickered between different spectrums of light as they communicated through color patterns. Zara guided Ben through the crowds, introducing him to various species. Each reaction was similar, initial curiosity about humans, followed by confusion when scanners showed no unusual energy signatures, then dismissal when Ben failed to demonstrate any remarkable abilities. What is your species' unique contribution to galactic society? Asked Ambassador Thane, a tall, silver-skinned being whose people could manipulate gravity fields. We survive, Ben answered simply. Thane's expression showed polite confusion. I mean, what special abilities do humans possess? What makes your species valuable to the greater galactic community? Ben considered this question carefully while Zara watched him with growing curiosity. She had never seen him struggle to answer anything before. We endure, he said finally. When everything else fails, humans find a way to continue. Thane exchanged glances with other ambassadors nearby, their expressions showing the same dismissive pattern Zara had seen all day. I see. Well, perhaps endurance has its place in the galaxy. As the day progressed, Zara watched her husband navigate conversations with patience and dignity, even as species after species dismissed humanity as unremarkable. The formal presentations began in the afternoon, with each delegation showcasing their unique abilities. The Volari demonstrated their energy weaving, creating complex light patterns that told stories spanning centuries. The Keth performed perfectly coordinated dances that required split-second timing across dozens of individuals. The Thraxi shaped matter into living sculptures that moved and changed before the audience's eyes. When the time came for Earth's delegation to present, the small group of human diplomats stood awkwardly in the center of the vast chamber. Ambassador Lin, the lead human representative, spoke about Earth's agricultural techniques and manufacturing capabilities. The alien audience listened politely but without real interest. And what of combat capabilities? asked a Keth representative. How do humans defend themselves against superior forces? Ambassador Lin gestured toward Ben. Perhaps our military representative could speak to that. Ben stood slowly, his hand unconsciously moving to rest on his sword hilt. The massive chamber fell silent as thousands of alien eyes focused on the quiet human who had barely spoken all day. Human military doctrine is simple, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber despite its softness. We identify what needs to be protected. Then we make sure it stays protected. But how? Pressed a Thraxi noble. You have no energy manipulation, no telepathic coordination, no matter control. How do you defeat enemies with superior abilities? Ben was quiet for a long moment, and Zara could see him choosing his words carefully. We decide that losing is not acceptable, he said finally. Then we act on that decision. Laughter rippled through parts of the audience. Not cruel laughter, but the kind reserved for children who did not understand how the adult world worked. Zara felt her skin patterns flare with embarrassment and anger, but Ben's expression remained perfectly calm. Thank you, Ambassador Lin said quickly, gesturing for Ben to sit back down. That concludes our presentation. As the formal sessions ended and delegates began to mingle again, Zara found herself surrounded by well-meaning friends who offered sympathy for her husband's poor showing. Do not worry, dear, said her cousin Rika. Not every species can be remarkable. Humans seem pleasant enough, even if they lack any real capabilities. Zara looked across the chamber to where Ben stood alone near a viewing wall, watching the stars beyond the dome. He seemed completely unbothered by the day's events, as if the opinions of the most powerful beings in the galaxy meant nothing to him. For the first time since their marriage, Zara wondered if she truly knew the man she had chosen. There was something in his stillness, something in the way he carried himself, that suggested depths she had never explored. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities for her husband to show what humans were truly capable of. She just hoped she would be ready for whatever that revelation might bring. The second day of the Galactic Council gathering began with celebration. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered in the observation chamber to witness the signing of new trade agreements. The massive transparent dome showed the star field beyond, where colorful nebulae painted the darkness in shades of purple and gold. Zara stood with Ben near the refreshment area, watching her people mingle with delegates from dozens of worlds. The Keth moved in their perfect formations, their hive mind allowing them to coordinate every gesture. The Thraxi casually reshaped decorative elements as they talked, turning simple metal fixtures into flowing art. Energy beings from the Photon Collective flickered between different light spectrums as they communicated. Your people are impressive, Ben said quietly, observing a group of Valari who were weaving light patterns in the air while they discussed mining rights. They think you are not, Zara replied, still feeling the sting of yesterday's dismissals. Ben's expression remained calm. What they think does not change what I am. Before Zara could ask what he meant, the lights in the chamber began to flicker. Conversation stopped as delegates looked around in confusion. The Valari's skin patterns shifted to concerned orange while the Keth tightened their formations instinctively. Technical malfunction, suggested Ambassador Thane, his silver skin reflecting the unstable lighting. Then the screaming began. The sound came from everywhere and nowhere, a howling that seemed to reach directly into their minds. Delegates pressed their hands to their ears, but the noise continued. Through the transparent walls of the dome, shapes began to emerge from the star field, dark forms that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Void wraiths, whispered Elder Corinne, the oldest Valari present. Her crystal skin went pale white with terror. I thought they were just legends. What are void wraiths? Ben asked, his hand moving instinctively toward his sword. Ancient beings of pure energy, Corinne replied, her voice shaking. They consume life force itself. No physical form, no weakness, no way to fight them. The first wraith passed through the dome's wall as if it were not there. The creature looked like a moving shadow shaped roughly like a person, but its edges flickered with hungry darkness. Where it touched the elegant metal decorations, they crumbled to dust. Panic erupted in the chamber. Delegates ran in all directions as more wraiths poured through the walls. The Volari warriors immediately formed defensive positions, their hands glowing with energy as they prepared their most powerful attacks. "Energy Lance Formation," shouted Captain Dex, the highest-ranking Volari military officer present. Bright beams of concentrated light shot from the warrior's hands, striking the nearest wraith directly in its center. The energy passed harmlessly through the creature. The wraith turned toward the warriors and moved forward, its form growing larger as it approached. "Impossible!" Dex gasped. "Nothing can resist pure energy manipulation." The Keth delegation attempted their own defense, coordinating a telepathic assault that should have overwhelmed any conscious being. 50 Keth minds joined together and directed their combined mental force at the approaching wraiths. The creatures did not even slow down. "Our telepathy has no effect," reported the Keth Prime speaker, his voice tight with disbelief. "These beings have no minds to attack." The Thraxi tried reshaping the chamber itself, creating barriers and weapons from the available matter. Metal walls rose from the floor, plasma cannons formed from decorative pillars, and energy shields materialized in the air. The wraiths moved through all of it as if nothing existed. One by one, the most powerful species in the galaxy discovered that their greatest abilities meant nothing against the void wraiths. Energy manipulation, telepathy, matter control, gravity fields, none of it worked. The creatures continued forward, reaching out with shadowy appendages that touched fleeing delegates. When a wraith touched someone, the result was terrible to witness. The victim did not die quickly. Instead, their life force slowly drained away, leaving them weakened and helpless while the creature fed. Volari's skin lost its crystal clarity, becoming dull and gray. Keth individuals lost their mental connection to the hive, leaving them confused and alone. Energy beings from the Photon Collective flickered weakly as their light dimmed. "Everyone to the emergency shelters." Ambassador Lin shouted, trying to coordinate the human delegation's escape. The small group of Earth representatives huddled together, clearly terrified but attempting to help other species reach safety. Zara watched the chaos in growing horror. Her people, the mighty Volari with their energy mastery, were helpless. The Keth, with their perfect coordination and mental powers, could not even slow the attackers. Every advanced species in the galaxy was running in panic from creatures they could not understand or fight. "Ben," she called, looking around frantically. "We need to get to the shelters." But Ben was not running. He stood perfectly still in the center of the chamber, watching the wraiths with calm attention. His hand rested on his sword hilt, and his breathing was slow and steady despite the screams around him. "Ben!" Zara grabbed his arm. "We have to go." "No," he said quietly. "Running will not help." "What do you mean?" "Everyone is running." Ben looked at her with those steady brown eyes she had fallen in love with. "Everyone is running because their powers do not work." "But I do not have powers, Zara. I have something else." Before she could ask what he meant, a wraith noticed them. The creature turned away from the Volari warrior it had been draining and moved toward Ben and Zara. Its form seemed to pulse with dark hunger, and the temperature around them dropped as it approached. "Ben, please," Zara whispered, her skin patterns flickering between terror and desperation. "It will drain your life force. There is nothing you can do." Ben stepped forward, placing himself between Zara and the approaching wraith. His hand closed around his sword hilt, and for the first time since she had known him, his expression changed. The quiet calm she was used to remained, but underneath it, something else emerged. Something hard and unyielding, like stone that had been compressed for millions of years. "Yes, there is," he said. Ben drew his sword. The moment the blade cleared its sheath, everything changed. The simple metal weapon did not glow or hum with power. It did not shoot energy beams or create force fields. Instead, it seemed to absorb light and sound around it, creating a zone of absolute stillness in the chaos of the chamber. The wraith stopped moving forward. For the first time since the attack began, one of the creatures showed hesitation. It tilted its shadowy head, studying Ben with what might have been confusion or surprise. "Interesting," Ben said softly, holding the sword in a relaxed grip. "You can sense it, can't you?" The wraith suddenly lunged forward, its form expanding as it reached out to drain Ben's life force. Ben moved to meet it, and Zara gasped at the transformation in her husband. The quiet, patient man she knew was still there, but now she could see the warrior underneath. Ben moved with deadly precision, each step calculated, each motion serving a purpose. His sword cut through the air in a perfect arc, and when it touched the wraith's extended appendage, something impossible happened. The creature's shadowy limb simply ceased to exist where the blade passed through it. Not cut or damaged, erased, as if it had never been there at all. The wraith howled, a sound that made every being in the chamber clutch their heads in pain. But Ben did not even flinch. He stepped forward and swung the sword again, this time taking a larger portion of the creature's form. "What is he doing?" Captain Dex whispered, staring in shock. "How is he hurting them?" More wraiths noticed the disturbance and turned toward Ben. 3 of them approached together, their forms merging and separating as they coordinated an attack. Ben watched them come with perfect calm, adjusting his grip on the sword slightly. "Come on then," he said quietly. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy's greatest minds had ever witnessed. Ben moved through the attacking wraiths like a force of nature, his sword cutting away pieces of their existence with each strike. Where their energy attacks passed harmlessly through the creatures, his simple metal blade carved through them as if they were made of morning mist. But it was more than just the sword. Zara watched in amazement as she realized what was really happening. The weapon was not magical or enhanced with special technology. It was just focus, a way to direct something that came from Ben himself. When a wraith tried to drain his life force, Ben simply refused to let it happen. When they attempted to overwhelm him with their alien presence, he maintained his human perspective with unbreakable determination. Where other species relied on external powers that the wraiths could counter or ignore, Ben fought with something fundamental, the sheer force of conscious will made manifest. "He is not using energy manipulation," Elder Corin whispered in awe. "He is imposing his will directly on reality." More wraiths poured into the chamber, drawn by the disturbance. Ben stood his ground, his movements becoming faster and more precise as the numbers increased. Each swing of his sword erased another piece of shadow, each step forward claimed more space from the creatures that had seemed invincible moments before. Zara watched her quiet husband become something magnificent and terrifying. This was not the gentle man who sat peacefully in their garden. This was a human who had decided that something needed protecting, and had therefore made it impossible for that protection to fail. The remaining wraiths seemed to realize they faced something they could not understand or overcome. They began retreating, their forms flickering as they moved back toward the walls of the chamber. Ben followed them, his sword cutting through the last few creatures that tried to maintain their attack. When the final wraith dissolved under his blade, he stood alone in the center of the chamber, breathing normally despite the intense battle. Silence filled the dome as hundreds of representatives from the galaxy's most advanced species stared at the human who had just accomplished what all their combined technologies and abilities could not. Ben cleaned his sword on a piece of cloth from his pocket, then slid it back into its sheath. The zone of stillness around him faded, and normal light and sound returned to the chamber. He looked around at the staring faces, then walked calmly back to where Zara stood frozen in amazement. "Are you hurt?" he asked, checking her for injuries with gentle hands. Zara could only shake her head, her skin patterns cycling through colors she did not even recognize. Around them, the most powerful beings in the galaxy began to whisper questions they could not answer, while her silent husband simply took her hand and waited to see what would happen next. The great chamber of the council dome remained silent for several long minutes after the last void wraith disappeared. Hundreds of delegates from across the galaxy stood frozen, trying to understand what they had just witnessed. The most advanced species in known space, beings who could manipulate energy, reshape matter, and coordinate through hive minds, had been helpless against the ancient threat. Yet one quiet human with a simple sword had driven them away completely. Ben stood beside Zara, his weapon sheathed and his breathing normal, as if he had just finished a morning walk instead of an impossible battle. His brown eyes scanned the chamber, checking for any remaining threats, while the galaxy's greatest mind stared at him in stunned silence. How? The word came from Captain Dex, the Valari military officer whose energy attacks had passed harmlessly through the wraiths. His crystal skin flickered with confused patterns as he approached Ben cautiously. Our scanners show no energy signature from your weapon. No power source, no enhancement fields, nothing that could explain what you just did. Ben looked at the captain with the same patient expression he used when explaining simple concepts to children. Your scanners look for energy because that is what your people use for power. But energy is not the only force in the universe. Then what is? Demanded Ambassador Thane, his silver skin reflecting the lights as he moved closer. What power source does humanity possess that we cannot detect? Will, Ben said simply. The word hung in the air like a challenge. Several delegates made sounds of confusion or dismissal, their own languages creating a chorus of bewilderment. Elder Corinne, the oldest Valari present, stepped forward with slow, careful movements. Her ancient crystal skin showed deep purple patterns of thought and memory. Explain what you mean by will, human Ben. We must understand what happened here. Ben was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly through the vast chamber despite its softness. Every species in this room developed abilities that work outside themselves, he began. You Valari learned to manipulate energy fields. The Keth created hive minds for telepathic coordination. The Thraxi gained control over matter itself. All powerful abilities, but they depend on external forces, energy, mental connections, molecular structures. He gestured toward where the wraiths had been. Those creatures could counter your abilities because they understood energy, telepathy, and matter manipulation. They had defenses against external powers because they had encountered them before. But you hurt them, whispered a Keth representative, his mental isolation from the hive making his voice uncertain. You destroyed them with a simple metal blade. The blade is just metal, Ben agreed. But what I directed through it was something they had never encountered. Something that cannot be scanned, measured, or countered because it comes from the core of consciousness itself. Ambassador Lin, the lead human diplomat, moved closer to Ben with an expression of growing understanding. You are talking about human determination, are you not? Our ability to refuse defeat when something important is at stake. Ben nodded slowly. Your people call it determination. Others might call it stubbornness or refusal to accept limits. But it is more than that. He looked around at the gathered delegates, his gaze touching each species represented. When a human decides that something must be protected, that decision becomes a force that can reshape reality itself. That is impossible, declared a Thraxi noble, his matter manipulation abilities creating nervous patterns in the air around him. Consciousness cannot directly affect physical laws. There must be some mechanism we are not detecting. Is it impossible? Ben asked quietly. You reshape matter with your thoughts. The Valari weave energy with their emotions. The photon collective exists as pure conscious light. Every species here proves that consciousness affects reality. Humans just do it more directly. Zara listened to her husband explain concepts she had never imagined, feeling as if she was seeing him clearly for the first time. Ben, she said softly, when did you discover this ability? Ben's expression softened as he looked at her. Humans have always had it. We just thought everyone did. He smiled that small smile she loved. When your child is in danger, do you not feel that you could move mountains to save them? When someone you love is threatened, does something inside you not become absolutely certain that you will find a way to protect them? Yes, Zara whispered, her skin patterns showing recognition. But that is just emotion, just feeling. For other species, maybe, Ben said. But humans learn to make those feelings real. Not through technology or energy manipulation, but through pure focused intent. When we decide something matters enough, we can impose our will directly on the universe. Captain Dex shook his head, his patterns showing frustrated disbelief. If humans possess such power, why do your people live on minor colonies? Why do you work in manual labor and basic manufacturing? Why does the galaxy see you as a primitive species? Ben's answer was so simple that its truth was undeniable. Because most of the time, we do not need to use it. We save it for when everything else has failed and something truly important is at stake. The implications of this statement sent waves of understanding through the gathered delegates. Species that had spent millennia developing external powers suddenly realized they had overlooked something fundamental about consciousness itself. The Void Wraiths, Elder Corinne said slowly, her ancient mind working through the revelation. They fed on life energy, telepathic connections, and matter-based existence. But pure will, focused conscious intent, that was something outside their understanding. They could not drain what they could not comprehend, Ben confirmed. And they could not defend against a force they had never encountered. Ambassador Thane's silver skin rippled with new patterns as he processed this information. You are saying that humanity has been hiding this capability? That your entire species possesses this power? Not hiding, Ben corrected gently. We just never thought it was remarkable. Every human parent who lifts a vehicle to save their trapped child uses this ability. Every soldier who holds a position against impossible odds draws on this force. Every person who refuses to give up when someone they love needs them accesses this power. He touched the hilt of his sword briefly. This blade is not special except that it helps me focus. Any human could do what I did if they had sufficient reason and proper training. We have simply never needed to demonstrate it before. The chamber erupted in dozens of languages as delegates began discussing the implications among themselves. The Keth clustered together, trying to understand individual determination without their hive-mind connection. The Thraxi reshaped random objects nervously as they considered a power they could not analyze or copy. The Valari's skin patterns cycled through every color of confusion and amazement. Zara moved closer to Ben, her own skin showing deep blue patterns of love mixed with awe. All this time, I thought I was protecting you from those who saw humans as weak. But you never needed protection, did you? I needed you, Ben said simply, taking her hand. Strength without love is just destruction. Will without purpose is just stubbornness. You gave me something worth protecting, which made everything else possible. Before Zara could respond, Elder Corinne approached them both. The ancient Valari's skin showed formal gold patterns as she stopped before Ben and performed the deep bow reserved for honored warriors. On behalf of the Galactic Council, she said in a voice that carried across the chamber, I formally apologize for humanity's treatment as a minor species. We measured you by our own standards and found you lacking, never realizing you operated by entirely different principles. Other delegates began approaching, each offering their own apologies and expressions of respect. The Keth Prime speaker performed their ritual of acknowledgement for a superior force. The Thraxi delegation reshaped precious metals into gifts of honor. Even the energy beings from the Photon Collective pulsed in patterns that indicated deep respect. Through it all, Ben remained calm and gracious, accepting their recognition without pride or satisfaction. When Ambassador Lin suggested that Earth should be offered immediate membership in the Council's inner circle, Ben politely declined. Humanity appreciates the offer, he said, but we are not interested in ruling others or being ruled by them. We just want to live in peace and help when help is needed. But surely you understand what this means, pressed Captain Dex. With abilities like yours, humans could become the most powerful species in the galaxy. Ben's expression grew serious. Power that comes from the will to protect becomes evil when it is used for domination. Humans learned long ago that our strength is most dangerous when we forget why we developed it. As the formal discussions began about humanity's new status in galactic society, Zara and Ben found themselves alone near the observation windows. The stars beyond looked the same as always, but everything else had changed. Are you disappointed? Zara asked quietly. That I thought you were just an ordinary man. Ben laughed softly, the sound warm and genuine. I am just an ordinary man. That is the point. Every human is ordinary until they have something worth protecting. Then they become extraordinary. But now everyone will expect great things from your people. Some humans will rise to meet those expectations, Ben said with calm certainty. Others will continue living quiet lives until they are needed. That is what makes us human. We do not seek power, but we do not avoid responsibility when it finds us. Zara studied her husband's profile as he watched the stars. The council will want to understand human abilities better. They will ask for teachers, demonstrations, scientific studies. And some humans will help with that, Ben agreed. But not me. I have more important things to do. Such as? Ben turned to face her fully, his brown eyes holding the same gentle love she had fallen for years ago. I have a wife to return home to. A garden that needs tending. A quiet life that is worth more than all the power in the galaxy. As the council continued their discussions behind them, Zara leaned against Ben's shoulder and watched the stars. For the first time, she understood why she had been drawn to this quiet man who rarely spoke but always listened. She had not married a human despite his apparent weakness, she had married him because of his hidden strength. And that strength had nothing to do with defeating ancient enemies or impressing galactic councils. It had everything to do with the will to protect what mattered, the determination to keep promises, and the courage to love completely. The galaxy might never be the same after learning what humans were truly capable of, but Ben and Zara would return home to their crystal garden, where the most important power in the universe would continue growing quietly between them.